Guys, can everyone sit down? We're going to start in 20 seconds. How's everyone doing? Good? Let me ask that again. How's everyone doing? Yeah. All right, there we go. My name is Piyush Kumar. I'll be the moderator for today. And with us we have three really interesting people with us. On my left side we have Jenna Hayden from B Notions. B Notions is a socially conscious technology company working out of Toronto. They specialize in product strategy, user experience, and development of mobile, social, and web applications for multinational brands, entrepreneurs, and enterprises. A little bit about Jenna herself. She's the director of marketing. She comes from a PR, journalism, and a startup marketing background, working with big data analytics startups called Treasure Data and Mirror.me in the Valley, as well as LA-based online tech publication TechZulu. She's working at B Notions, and she was educated at University of Southern California, and she got into technology through a kite surfing group that she traveled and worked with. Really interesting. Then we have Hong Wei. He's the co-founder of Mapped-In. Mapped-In helps you find your ways in malls and search for specific stores or restaurants using their interactive maps and step-by-step navigational guides. You can use Mapped-In to also see what's going on around you, meet up with friends, find promotions, and stay up to date with ongoing events. They have their kiosk up in Conestoga Mall, so if you guys get a chance, check it out. It's really sick. A little bit about Hongwei himself. He's an electrical engineering major from UW, who joined Velocity in 1B. He started working on Mapped-In as a weekend project, and now 2 years later, he has postponed school to pursue his passion full-time. Off hours, he enjoys playing badminton, reading, and catching up on sleep. Nice. And to our extreme left, we have Michael Litt from Vidyard. Vidyard is passionate about videos. They believe in communication power of video to promote a product, educate a user base, or simply keep in touch with those around you. They help businesses, bloggers, and individuals put videos on their website in a simple and effective way. A bit about Michael himself. He was born, raised, and schooled in Waterloo region. He has already tried his hand at day trading, launched a smartphone teardown blog, started a biodiesel enterprise, and co-founded a media company before he came up with Vidyard as his fourth-year design project at University of Waterloo. Vidyard's so-called YouTube for Business concept earned his team a coveted spot at Y Combinator, Silicon Valley's highest-ranking incubator last year. So, since we got the introductions out of the way, we can start with questions. And the first question I have is to all the panelists. So once you have an idea, what are the next steps that are needed to be taken to see if the idea is feasible? How do you turn it into a product and into a reality once you have an idea in your, what are the next steps? Start with, Michael, I guess, and then we'll go down.
Yeah, sure. Closer. I think the most important thing to think about as you guys are in undergrad and thinking of ideas and planning to be entrepreneurs would be to obviously attend events like this, but focus on executing more than talking. You can really easily talk or think your way out of an idea because you realize that there's a big competitive landscape where there isn't any market potential. And you guys are all smart. I'm assuming you come from engineering, CS, math backgrounds. It's very easy to realize that you might be rabbit-holing yourself with an idea. But unfortunately, or fortunately, as it may seem, is as you're building it, you'll come across technical barriers that you can't overcome, and you'll realize that there's other opportunities that exist. And so the most important thing is to keep writing code. And as soon as you have something that resembles a product, to try to get customers. And that first step is really difficult. I'd suggest just, uninstalling every video game from your computer. Trust me, it might be needed. Tell your girlfriend, if you have one, or boyfriend, that you probably won't be available for the next little while, and just go hack something out. And then once you have it, send it to me. Like, let me know what it looks like. Tell me what you're doing, what your plans are and stuff, and we'll take a peek. Because feedback from other founders is super important, from your peers. Find customers as early as possible. The one thing that we did was we created a landing page that just said we're developing a platform that's going to revolutionize the way you do business online. Super vague, super full of shit. But we followed like fucking thousands of people on Twitter that were talking about video and generated conversations with them. And I spent like 3 hours a day doing this for weeks. And we generated a list of like 1,800 people that were ready to try the product in its first version when we launched. And they were super forgiving. They're not as dickish as you'd probably think they are. Some of them are, but you just have to have thick skin. So again, the most important thing is just do it.
Cool. And what Mike said is totally true, except the gaming part. His company is the one that does daily TF2 sessions, so fun is still pretty important. But I will say one thing, which is that Dan Martell, which is a pretty well-known and respected investor from the Valley, he has one piece of advice, which is if you have an idea, build it. But even before that, ask everyone you know what they think. But they're just going to give you bullshit answers, right? So ask them for $20. If they say it's cool, it's like, all right, so well, you give me $20, and when I build it, you can have it, right? Kickstart it, get people's real advice, and then you'll get to the bottom of the truth really, really quickly. Whether what you're doing is seriously cool, whether people will pay for it, or whether it's just a weekend project. And, that's a great way to get started as well. But certainly everything Mike has said, just do it, man. Try to avoid the hype. Try to avoid, what's hot right now. Just build something that people need and test it out right away as fast as you can. And that's the quickest way to get to success or failure, which both are great end solutions.
I would agree for the most part. Although I think because I'm a marketing person, I always look at the market first. So you don't want to build a product that nobody's going to use. So you're definitely going to want to have that moment where you say, would I use this product, and am I part of this target market? And if you are not, you want to get out of your door and kind of take this deep blank approach and ask everyone you know. Exactly, I like the $20, I haven't heard that. Ask everyone you know if they would buy it, or if they would use this product, and if they use this product, what utilities do they need, what do they want out of the product, are you solving a problem? Because I think a lot of the times in technology, we often build technology for the sake of building technology, and not for solving a need or a problem. And your market is usually looking for a solution. So I definitely think that it is a combination of both too. You definitely want to make sure that you're always building. I think because we're mainly a development company, we're always constantly building stuff in-house, even though we're not yet clear of the market. So it's definitely a combination of both.
That was really interesting, the $20 one. I don't think a lot of people have heard that. But going off of that, in your experience, what has been the hardest stage in starting a startup? Is it the idea generation? Is it like implementing your ideas? Like, what in your experience, what has been the hardest stage to developing a startup?
I would say every stage is the hardest until you hit the next one. It always seems like it's the hardest, right? There's no easy stage. I think actually probably the easiest part is just hacking away on a weekend, working with someone when it's low commitment, right? The hardest part is when you actually commit to working full time on something, to investing your own money, to getting in front of customers, getting the rejections, getting the no's. That for me was the hardest. I think that all of you guys are really talented. Building something should be the easy part, and that should be something that you guys can do really quickly and easily.
Yeah, I'd say instead of being here, you should be hacking.
Yeah.
Once again, as a marketing person, I would put a lot of focus in that idea. Is there a market for it? And when you do get out the door, there's going to be a lot of people who tell you no, it sucks, and you're still going to want to hack away. But I think that the idea is it can be a difficult stage. I know with a lot of our in-house projects, we're constantly thinking about market size, would people use this product, who is going to use this product. So things like that, but you're right, every single stage can be difficult. When you come to the time when you're looking to raise, it also can be very difficult. It's a lot longer than you predict. Closing your round, it feels like it's never ending. So yeah, once again, hardest till you get to the next.
Well, I think just to maybe add something there, and to add on what Hongwei said, every stage certainly gets harder. harder than you would have expected it. When we launched the product, the next phase was getting users. We knew that there was validation, and people had told us, because we did go out to all of our family, friends, contacts, people on Twitter to validate the concepts that we were working on. But then getting people to pay money for it is a different story completely. And what you'll find is that everybody you go to says, well, I'd love it if it had this feature. And then you get into feature creep and all that other bullshit. But that's not even the hardest part. The hardest part is building a team. So once you have funding, once you are making money, convincing people to come work for you when there's Facebooks and Googles around the corner is also very difficult. Maintaining a company culture is really hard. Once you hit 12 people, politics start to creep in, at least from our experience. And so Drew Houston, who's the founder of Dropbox, you look at him and he's got a $5 billion company and like 300 employees. He came to our class at YC and said, you just approach problems at face value. You do whatever is next. And so when you look at someone like Enotions and you see that, how many people do you have now?
There were 50.
It's a 50-person company, but it probably took like 2-3 years to get there. Don't worry about that stuff. Worry about the next closest milestone, which is shipping product if you've already validated a market to an extent. But don't get caught up on validating the market.
Good point. That is true. Very true. You do want to make sure there's a market, but I mean, you look at Reid Hoffman said with LinkedIn, he said, yeah, I'm going to bring business networking online. He said 70% of people said, that's crazy. No one will use that. So in a sense, you're right. You have the future group. I've never heard that term. I like it. But keep building. Make sure you're building the right way.
Yeah, and it's super iterative, and that's why you hear that stupid term pivot, which none of you should ever use. Especially if you're like switching ideas completely. What happens is you feel like you validate the market, you build something, and then it turns out it either falls out from underneath you or isn't there. But again, pick yourself back up and build and learn from your experiences. And there's always pieces of your code base you can reuse too. So from a technical perspective, keep moving.
Thank you for those answers. So once you have an idea, once you get a team together, right? Once you have a product, what is the best way to get funding? Is it actually cold calling investors, be like, hey, this is my product, what do you think? Or doing elevator pitches, or is it waiting for demo days or days like that where the investors they actually come to you? In your experience, what has been the best way to get funding and best way to get in contact with the investors and VCs?
I can tell a story. I don't know.
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. So my background traditionally is to build businesses that can be sustainable without venture funding. That's what I had done. Lit Energies, which was that biodiesel thing, was a big fiasco, and that we needed capital before we had validated the model, which is really never going to happen unless you have some success under your belt in a previous instance. So Redwoods Media was a content production company. We were making videos for businesses to explain their products. Vidyard came out of a need that we saw from those companies. So we built something people wanted. Redwoods Media was a profitable company. There was 3 of us running it. We were kind of laughing. And so we had money in the bank that we could invest in the development of the platform. That said, when we looked at hiring engineers, paying ourselves, all that other stuff, we realized that we were going to need some capital. So we hadn't really validated the product. We hadn't built anything yet, and we understood that going to an investor and asking for money in that stage was pretty much impossible, especially in Canada. There isn't a VC or an angel around every corner that's willing to throw money at the next best idea. Canadians are very adverse to using or believing in other Canadians for some reason, which is terrible. So as soon as you think of raising money, I would say go stateside if you can. But what we did was we went to CYBF, we went to OCE, and we raised some debt money. So we had about $65,000 from various grants and debt form cash, and we had a first version of the product, and we put 10 customers on it. Each one of those customers was paying us $200 a month. And we put 10 customers on it in a relatively short period of time because I had done a bunch of legwork ahead of time. So then we decided to start raising money, and we knew that there was easy ways. So there's the Investment Accelerator Fund, which is called IF. They can do a $500,000 investment, but it takes roughly 4 months to get. And so we started talking to them. And we leveraged that into an introduction to Dennis Kabbelman, who is the CFO at RIM. And he was recently back from holidays and wanted to do an investment. And because we had a business that was making money, we already had customers on the platform, it was a very easy decision for him. So he decided to write us a check for 200 grand at really terrible terms. So we kind of like baited him and kept that as an aside until we got accepted into Y Combinator, and the rest is kind of history. So if you can execute within Y Combinator, at the very end of the program, there's 400 investors who are willing to give you cash, and the only way into that room is if they're going to invest in one of the companies presenting. So you're very likely to raise money. Now you hear about a lot of companies that come out of YC with $1 million, $2 million, $4 million in funding. That's true for like the 90th percentile. There's a bunch of companies that don't get any more than 500 grand or 200 grand. But if you play the game right, it's actually quite easy to raise money. You just have to time everything accordingly. Now my experience was different for all the other startups, and I know a lot of the guys that have stayed locally have struggled, and that's probably where Hunway can provide some interesting insight. So.
Sure. I guess I'll go next. So to follow on what Mike said, I would stay away from the government until last resort. The government is great money when you don't need it, and it's impossible to get when you do. So I think everyone I know of that's done a startup has tried to get some government money, and I've never heard of a single good story from that. So we personally are trying to get some matching funds. We raised 30 grand just for fun a while ago as part of a larger round, and the government was going to match 30. We got the first 15, and now for the second 15, I'm having to put like just a pointless amount of work where it's not even worth it to leave that money on the table and try to get it. So stay away from government money. As Mike said, we are local, so what we did is, what happened was, following on Fuchsia's introduction, I was at Velocity. I actually applied there for the air conditioning for no other reason than that. But in the first week, I just got started on a project, and here we are, and we just kept working at it. But what really got us going is, the Velocity Venture Fund is probably one of the only funds out there that's like friendly money. Like you just get money, and it's awesome. And I would highly encourage all of you to apply for that, because that's one of the few ways to get $25,000 without strings, without bullshit. It's pretty good. And that's what got us started. But we've been locally talking to a lot of investors. They're pretty hard to deal with, but I think the easiest way to get into an investor's radar is to find somebody. Cold calling an investor, I don't think ever works. You want a warm introduction, and everyone knows someone, right? If you talk to anyone who knows investors, they're all actually looking for people to invest in. There's plenty of people with money, they just don't think they have a good catch out there. So if you know somebody, just show them your shit. Like show Mike, show me, show Jeff, and we'll take a look. And if it's cool, then we'll happily recommend it to someone that we think might be interested, right? I mean, in the last month, I've actually showed 2 people to angels, and they both have raised at this point, just because I knew that this guy's building exactly what that guy told me he wanted a week ago. So obviously, I'll make that connection. And there's no way that would happen otherwise. So just talk to people, reach out to your network, reach out to us or anyone else that you know, and get involved in Boston. Man. It's a good program to have at this campus that you're on.
Actually, the one thing to add is our intro to Dennis Kabbelman came through a lawyer, actually, Dave Fady. So all of you guys should get to know Dave Fady if you're going to stay local. Can't say Mr. Clean.
Write the name down, guys.
This is actually all new to me because we Notions were bootstrapped, and before I was in the US, the companies I worked with in the Valley were all warm lead, so it was all an introduction, the relationship that they had built through that introduction. So often they didn't immediately ask for funding. Instead, knew this angel or VC who was interested in the type of business they were building, and said, hey, this is what we're building, just wanted to show it to you, would love to pick your brain regarding, and just kind of nurtured that relationship. So I'm not sure, I guess Canada is totally new to me the way it works here, probably a lot different.
There's way less investors per capita.
Yeah.
So basing what Jenna said about the Valley, I want to ask you. So you worked in the Valley for a couple of years. What are the biggest differences you see, in the mentality in the startup scene in the Valley compared to Canada? Now you're working for Notions. What are some of the key differences that just stand out and you're like, wow, I didn't even think that was possible?
Yeah, definitely. On the last question, I did forget to mention that Notions is also an incubator. So feel free to show us what you're working on. But to address the Valley, there's huge differences. The Valley is basically Canada on crack. So there's a reason, it's a game of density, especially with investors, and a reason why you're looking at like 90% of major companies are going to be on the Valley. And it's just a game of density and like-minded people and talented people who move there from all over the world to be part of this technology hub. It's got a very long history. It's got a very developed pipeline from education into becoming an entrepreneur. So if you look at a school like Stanford and the entrepreneurship program there, you are literally being trained to build a company. And so I think Canada is definitely becoming a main part of the technology scene in the world, and especially in Toronto and here at Waterloo. It's purely a game of density though, and like Michael was saying, if you're looking for funding, looking stateside is definitely a great option.
I just want to add one more thing. I realized that in my answer I didn't actually say what we did to raise money here. And I found that in Canada, probably the only way to have a straightforward process raising money is to have customers in revenue, or a clear market where you have customers and maybe revenue down the road. So what we did is we got Conestoga Mall, we got the University of Waterloo, got a couple other locations in Waterloo, and now we're moving into Toronto with some awesome partners that are guaranteed to bring us sales, right? So you bring that to an investor and say, we're not making money today, but we have all these great customers, and they're going to get us this many more, and we have that awesome model, then it's easy to raise. But the problem is, to get there, most startups will die before then, and you need some money to get there, which we did as well. So there's no good answer. Apply for the venture fund, ask family and friends, ask everybody. It never hurts to ask, and go to the Valley when you have a chance.
So, just to, again, elaborate on what Hongwei said, customers and traction are super important, but also if you do have cash in the bank, it makes a big difference. So government money, IRAP, complete bullshit, I think. But if you're a student, working on some tech, the new entrepreneur grant from OCE is like 15 to 30 grand, and it's like one page. I don't know if you got that, but anyways, it's super easy for us to get. Like, it took me maybe 15 minutes to apply and get that money. But I worked with an OCE candidate. What's his name? He got the goofy face. No, he hovered on the hub. He's like a real big teddy bear. I don't know. Anyways, he worked with the people.
For a teddy bear, dude.
The other thing too, CYBF, did you do that?
We didn't, but Andrew Cross did, right? We had a terrible time. Like, so, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know what's different about our experience.
Like, it's good.
Just drive. I don't know. Anyways, having that money in the bank helped because it meant there was more of a cushion, and the investor was just kind of adding to that. So, but anyways, Valley. So, I got 3 things here, 4 things with the empty bullet. I have this ladder metaphor, which is Waterloo. The startup ladder is like this big, and there's rungs like all the way. There's Communitech, there's Velocity, and it's really easy to climb to the top of that ladder as long as you give a shit and you don't piss people off. In the Valley, the ladder's like, and in Toronto ladder's a little bigger. Not much bigger though. I don't think there's that many more tech companies actually in Toronto than there's in Waterloo. There's just more businesses that you can sell to. And in the Valley, the ladder's like huge. It doesn't even compare. You probably can't even see the top of it. And there's no rungs at the bottom. And so a lot of people think you can go to Silicon Valley and you can go and execute a strategy, and you're going to walk up the street and run into Joe Blow from Sequoia Capital, and he's going to write you a check for $40 million. There's like way more seedsters and bullshit dudes that have ideas and no execution in Silicon Valley, and you need to rise above those guys. So the best way to do that is with a program like Y Combinator or Techstars or whatever, 48 Hours in the Valley, just to get in front of people, but it's a long slog. So if you can climb that ladder in Waterloo first, then there's resources with Communitech to connect you with people in Silicon Valley that will get you above that space where there are no rungs. And so keep that in mind. Use Waterloo and Toronto and these local communities as a bridge. So the next thing that really sucks about Canada versus Silicon Valley is big companies don't have any willingness to adopt new technology. So like if RIM is going to be your customer, I mean 3 years ago that may have made sense when they had a bunch of money. Now, absolutely not. They just don't even care about the local startup community. Maybe they will more now, but back then they didn't at all. OpenText, same shit. Sybase, I mean, they're massive publicly traded companies. You'd think they'd be looking at tech, they don't. But in Silicon Valley, Apple, Facebook, Google, SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, SuccessFactors, they're all looking and watching TechCrunch to see the latest tech innovations, and they want to be the first ones to use those products. And that's a huge, huge, huge difference from here, right? Because you can start landing enterprise clients if that's your shtick very early and easily. So keep that in mind. Investment capital obviously has been touched on, way more abundant there, but again, harder to get to because of that rung system. The last thing is recruiting. As soon as you think of hiring engineers, good luck in Silicon Valley. Base salaries like 110, 115. You're looking at a serious chunk in your ESOP pool. Plus there's this big poaching issue. You import talent from Waterloo, you think, oh, I got the secret supply of wicked engineers, they're all my friends at Waterloo. You bring them out there, they'll go to a party, they'll meet somebody at X company up the street who gets a $15,000 signing bonus to get them to join, and they will. You just spent all your time and money on this visa application and they went and fucked off. Here, there's nowhere else to go. So if you become that big fish in a small pond, I haven't even heard of any poaching, especially locally. Like, engineers go work for companies, you can compensate them well. I mean, an $80,000 salary here because of shred and all the other tax benefits actually might equate to more like 35 grand when all is said and done. And so it's literally 3 times less expensive to operate a development team here than it is in Silicon Valley. That's a huge benefit. And so our investors were like, why the fuck are you going back to Canada? Like, what's in Canada? We showed them this data, they were blown away. And so we're kind of like one of the only companies in a lot of their funds that are funded, and as we started in Silicon Valley, but chose to move back here because of that. So that's the difference in my book, at least so far.
So I was wondering, Hongwei, like, you know, as Michael said, you know, those are big differences, but, you know, maybe in the future, would you take Mapton to the Valley, maybe check it out, and maybe come back? Or, you know, is it in the plans, or is it just staying in Waterloo, getting bigger, you know, climbing those rungs, and then maybe going after?
I think it'd be silly for any tech company to ignore the Valley and just hunker down Canada. You're just gonna miss out. So we've already been to the Valley, and we're going again. I'm actually flying out to San Diego this Friday. And you gotta have a presence there, you gotta know what's going on. But there's no real issue of being based in Canada, as far as I know. It is cheaper. And, you know, to touch on Mike's point, I'd like to tell you the story of how we got Conestoga Mall. You guys are all students. I was a student at the same time. I got a warm introduction through some guy. I asked like 1 million people who knew a mall guy. And someone knew the GM of Conestoga Mall. And so I sent her an email, and I just said, you know, hello Sandra, my name is Hongwei. I'm a student at the University of Waterloo, and I'm working on this pretty cool product called Mapton. I think it's, you know, I think it's something that's worth your time to check out. Do you have 15 minutes? And when you're a student, there's no one in the world that will actually say no to you. If you just ask for 15 minutes, they will give it to you. Everyone's down to help. Seriously.
Larry's advice?
That's my advice.
So Larry Smith gives that same advice. He gave it to me and I used it a bunch. So
yeah, just call up everybody, man, and lead. Like, it actually became harder for us to get meetings once I dropped that line, because I no longer can't use it in good faith, but I'm still trying sometimes. I can.
I use it still.
Yeah, but so what happened is I walked into that meeting, we had, you know, a demo, a really shitty demo on my laptop, and I was like, you know, this is what we think we can do with your mall, and we have these awesome touchscreen units, and we think we can replace those old directories that everyone hates, and I think you understand that right away. So, you know, we'd like to try it, but we'd like to get your feedback. And what they said after 5 minutes is, how fast do we have to say yes, or how soon do we have to say yes for you to get this in before December, before Christmas? And that was in September. So we got the sale in 15 minutes, and they were just down to do a beta and cover costs. That's how fast people can decide if you go in with the right approach and you truly have the right product. And just keep trying. We'd called so many people, but you'll always get meetings, you'll always be able to talk to people. Just say you're a student, say you're willing to learn. Most people will give you that 15 minutes, and it's very valuable. So,
good advice.
Oh, that's really good advice. So Michael, you said, you know, obviously the operating costs in Waterloo are much lower than Silicon Valley, right? But as a company, wouldn't it make sense to be closer to your customers? Because, you know, you're in Canada, most of your customers are in the States. So I was just wondering, you know, if that's one of the points that could, you know, sway the balance towards the valley. But
yeah, so fortunately, in the year 2012, the internet makes it pretty easy to market and sell to people all over the world. But there's still this thing called xenophobia that one of my team is a big advocate of, which is companies sometimes are scared to do business with foreign entities. Canada doesn't have as much of an issue as like someplace like India or even in some locations, but it is very difficult. So I was spending about a week a month in Silicon Valley and in LA because I was doing meetings with customers. This was pre-product. This was just to kind of generate relationships, because as Hong Wei probably realizes now, or maybe not, I don't know, but a lot of sales for big companies is relationship based. If you can't go see that person face to face, it's really difficult to build that rapport. As you probably know, for those of you who tried online dating. So, yeah, absolutely. You got to get your ass down there. And early, when you don't have a lot of money, like a flight is a huge contribution. So, book your flight early, find some couches to sleep on. I have this, I should probably publish this guide of traveling to Silicon Valley on the cheap. I used to do trips for like $400 total, and I'd be there for like 2 weeks. Surviving on like ramen on a friend's couch, because I did some co-op trims out there, which is something you should all do while you're still an undergrad. And yeah, you can just do it really cheap if you need to. So get in front of people for sure.
I agree too, because with B-Notions, we do 50% of our business is in the U.S. So we're flying back and forth quite a bit. Why I'm speaking at the panel and not our founders is because they are in New York. But we're in the year 2012, so it's easier to communicate across border.
Yeah. So the other question I want to ask is, what 3 tips do you give us to student entrepreneurs so they don't make the same mistakes as you guys did maybe when you were starting out? We heard some some of the mistakes you guys did, but maybe just to elaborate on the 3 things that all the entrepreneurs out here shouldn't be doing. They should be focusing their time doing something different and not be doing this. Start with maybe Michael or Jenna or Hong Wei.
I don't know, I can't think of 3 things in particular, but I was wondering maybe we can open up for questions, and that way I think that...
Yeah, we can definitely.
I would say one thing, which is you can't learn Kung Fu from a book. So stop reading whatever Eric Ries publishes and like blogs on startups and stuff, and start doing it. Absolutely, 100%. I think that's one area where I see a lot of people fail. The other thing that I would highly recommend that I never did would be to work at a startup. So I see a Stripe shirt. Did you work at Stripe?
No, I went to one of the events, so I was working at a startup.
Yeah, okay, cool. So at least you worked at a startup. So that's really important. So I know all 3 of our companies probably hire interns. So there obviously is awesome opportunities at companies like Google and Facebook. But you need to realize that at Google and Facebook right now, you're a cog in a very large wheel. And yeah, the culture is great, pay is fantastic, but a lot of us probably pay somewhere equivalent to what those guys do, maybe a little less. But if you join a startup early, you have a chance of making equity. We've offered all of our interns opportunities to extend their jobs if they're good, so they can make a little extra money, work during the work term. But you get to see like all aspects of the business run, which is like super vital to actually operating your own company eventually. I wish I had seen a business at my current stage, or at my current stage divided by 2. That would have been amazing, and I didn't. So now I have to try to figure it out for myself, which is fucking terrible. So, but it is fun. Anyways, that's my piece.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. I was actually just thinking today, like, where every so often you think, I wonder if I'm doing this right.
Yeah.
And you never have a frame of reference, and maybe there is no right way. But it would certainly help if you were at a successful startup. Trust me, if you work at a startup, you'll know the CEO, you'll know everybody. If it's under 20 people, you actually will know everyone. You'll know what everyone does, you'll see what everyone does. And if they like you and if you work hard, you'll get involved in pretty much everything. Like, we ask all of our interns, this is your job description, and we're sure you can do it because you're hired. But what do you actually, is there 1 or 2 things you actually want to work on, but you would like to be involved in? And we do our best to make sure that happens, right? Because generally what people like is what they end up being good at. So work at a startup, man, and then when you do your own, you'll have a frame of reference, because it sucks not knowing if you're doing the right thing sometimes.
Yeah.
So one last question before I open up to the audience. If you were to sum up the whole entrepreneurial experience in 1 word, what word would that be?
Sex.
It is what it is.
I was going to reference that office, yeah, but I forget the line.
Rocky.
Rocky.
Yeah, because I couldn't answer the three questions. I think, how do you narrow it down? Like just from a day-to-day basis, the things we run into, especially since we're very highly technical, just constant issues and bugs to figure out.
Homie, do you wanna, one word?
First word that came to mind is shit. Because that's probably what I think of most of the time, almost all the time. But shit can be cool, right? I mean, it's
I don't know if I agree with that. Mike's got a fetish. That one looks like.
But I mean, it's nice to have some excitement. It's great to have too much excitement almost rather than none, right? I mean, things always go wrong, shit always happens, people are always panicking. But I prefer that it's a lot more fun than just working together. So.
As like stupid and cliche as it sounds, my one word would be roller coaster.
Pivot.
Yeah, perfect.
Pivot.
Yeah, well, just because Paul Graham, for those who don't know, he's the founder of Y Combinator. During like your first few office hours, depending on where you're at or where your head's at, he draws this axis on the board, and it is this like chart of the course of every single startup. And what happens is that goes through Y Combinator. So it starts off, you're pretty flat, you start at zero, and then you have this massive spike, right? So you build your technology, the massive spike is this, when you launch on TechCrunch, you launch on the Next Web, Mashable, all these tech publications, and you see all this attention, and people love you, and your friends are like, holy fuck, you're so cool, like, I'm doing this thing, and it feels amazing. But that lasts for like maybe a month, and then it goes away. And you're left with this like piece of shit product that nobody really wants, and you have to find a business for it, you have to find a market for it, right? So you kind of go flatline for a bit, and then you hit what's called the trough of disillusionment, where you baseline and you think, you know, what am I doing? You wake up every morning and you're like, this is crazy. I don't know how I'm going to make payroll. I don't have any focus or vision. I don't like the way that guy looked at me. Like, just all this weird shit starts to happen. And then before you know it, you see these like wiggles of hope. I don't even know if I'm out of the trough of disillusionment or if I'm starting to see wiggles of hope, but there certainly are wiggles. And they're coming faster and faster. Oh man, that was bad. The wiggles start happening, and then you see success, right? And so it's kind of important just to think that, you know, that's almost there. It is a roller coaster. You're going to have ups and downs, but the downs, which is kind of counterintuitive to the metaphor, but when you're going down a roller coaster, you're having a lot of fun. It's amazing. It's exhilarating, and that happens. It happens, you know, far less than, you know, when you're going up, which sucks. Which again is counterintuitive to the metaphor, but it's worth it when you have those amazing experiences. Like this week, I personally, you know, we had a sales team. We had an external sales agent. He sucked. We fired him. It was really discouraging. So I went back onto enterprise sales and just closed our first deal. And it was one of the best feelings ever. So I'm actually feeling really good right now. Yeah, I'm just going on about this stuff. A roller coaster for sure.
Yeah. So I want to open up the questions for the audience. So if you want to say your name and, you know, what panelists are you referring the question to, that would be good. Yeah, who wants to go first? Yeah, Ali?
Alex Abed, question for Michael or whoever else wants to answer. But in terms of dealing with competition, looking at their technology, and then like how do you develop a like, do you have your strategy based on competition or just on your own product? Like, what's your focus?
I get obsessed with competitors. I look at their website before I go to bed, and it infuriates me. I wouldn't recommend anybody do that. And I realized that it's important to set your own path. Instead of focusing on your competitors, you should focus on your customers. Because, as Jenna mentioned earlier, they're the ones that are going to tell you what you need to build. That's your market research, right? And so your competitors might be blindly fumbling along, or they might have adopted a serious market, but that market's changed, and there's a need for something new. And if you're focusing on them, you're playing catch-up. How are you going to see what's new? So my recommendation is, you know, have blinders. Obviously, be aware. Sit on TechCrunch. You know, be knowledgeable that other stuff exists, but try to get beyond them. Try to leapfrog them, and do that by talking to your customers. We have a ton of competitors. Like, it's a super complicated space. Every day there's somebody popping up. So.
Yeah, and at the same time, don't be afraid of competitors. Most people will tell you that if you don't have competitors, you either haven't done enough research or you're doing the wrong idea, basically. Because all the good ideas have competitors. That's what actually pushes you to do better. That's what pushes us to always be better. We're always looking at what other people do. That's important.
And I think really early we just used our competitors as like, all right, this is what our pricing is going to be, and this is what our product page is going to say. And like made it a lot easier for us. And now it's like, all right, fuck them. Let's figure out what's better.
Yeah, I have pretended to be a law in Hong Kong and called up every one of our competitors asking for their full product package, and we just picked up the nice parts.
Yeah.
So you can do all these things. You just don't
I'm
tell people
glad
anything.
you admitted that because we do that too. We basically call them and we're like, oh, we're building this project and you want to get a quote?
Yeah, just do that all the time.
Just kind of one question off that. What if it's like a big competitor like Facebook or Google, like they adopt part of your product? Like how do you deal with that? Is it just you're obsolete now, or like how do you set yourself kind of apart from that?
Pivot. One of our competitors IPO'd, which was like a holy shit moment. And then just before we launched, 2 days before we launched, Vimeo announced Vimeo Pro, which was directly competitive. And that was also a holy shit moment. But we just kind of kept going, and it didn't really actually impede things as far as I know. But in some cases, I know Dan Martel, he had this gift marketing platform called, doesn't matter, and basically Facebook changed their terms of service and screwed over their entire business model because they started offering some portion of that technology themselves. So what he had was this like really big user base of like 18,000 companies, but he couldn't serve them a product anymore. So he took a subset of them and asked them what they wanted, what they needed. He just built that. So again, the most important thing is to get users and people interested in your business as fast as possible, because if and when that happens, you can repurpose them to some extent. So that's what I would do.
Yeah.
I get a question for all of you. So we've had a lot of talks about like web and software. When you have like hardware, in case of like mapped-in, you design the hardware, and then like how about do you go about finding a factory or like a manufacturing plant that will actually make something for you? Because there's thousands of companies that do this. So like how do you find the right one, for example?
Okay, well, I'll tell you what we did. I don't know the right way to do it, but when we first had the contract in Conestoga Mall, we had about 2 weeks to find a kiosk and ship it, and that sucked. But you know, we were just calling everybody, and then it was really the first person who had a nice kiosk that we wanted, that we just said, all right, fine, do it. How much does it cost? What? Fuck you, but fine. Let's do it. And like we paid them the money, we got the kiosk, and after that, we went to the opposite side of the spectrum. We ordered an equivalent unit from Hong Kong for a tenth the price. And that came 4 months later and kind of broke and wasn't that good either. So finally, we got a good referral. This factory called John G. Wilson, about 1 hour away. Bufferbox and us both use them. They're great. We paid $5,000 for a prototype, and they've made so many changes that I'm pretty sure they're losing in the 5 digits amount of money on just helping us build that thing. So they're really good. Just reach out to people. That's a great factory. I can always introduce you if you like. But there's plenty of people just call them.
When I was starting out, when I was doing PhoneRect, which was like a blog where I would take apart cell phones and publish the reference designs, and then sell those reference designs, I lived with Eric Majikowski, who is the guy behind the Pebble smartwatch, which was the highest grossing Kickstarter ever, and I think Ouya might have just topped him. And so he was supplying hardware directly from the manufacturers, because he was so close to RIM. Actually, is this being recorded? Okay, we'll talk offline. But there's really interesting things you can do to seem bigger than you are, at least what he did. But Hongwei definitely has more experience than that.
Tom there.
Yeah, talk to the bitch.
There's plenty of ways to do it again. Like, a quick Google search will yield a lot of results, I'm sure. But just don't be afraid to call someone and ask. It's actually not a lot of time.
Okay, let's do one last question. How was that time? You guys got to do rock, paper, scissors. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, you can ask the question. We'll go with you guys.
My question's for all the panelists. How cautious should you how do you start to protect your intellectual property?
I guess I can answer that first. For the most part, if you have a good idea, a lot of people are going to have that idea too. So I wouldn't be too nervous, although you still want to keep some secret sauce. So make sure, probably don't share how you're going to build it or lines of code. But I would, like the general idea, I would go out there and talk to everyone. You're likely going to run into a lot of people who are like, I have that exact same idea. Or someone who's like, I'm building that. And you're like, sure, great. But it's just ignore them. For if you're having a company like B-Notions build your product, obviously service companies sign non-disclosure, make sure you have that paperwork, but you don't need to have your friends sign any of that paperwork. I would go and talk to a lot of different people about it.
Yeah, talk to everyone. Velocity, so how mapping started is that you go to Velocity, what they used to do is everyone gets into brainstorm groups, you all come up with ideas, and it's not even your own idea. You just say, one of those ideas on the board I actually like. In my case, it's mapped in. Me and some friends came up with it in the brainstorm. But you can just say, I want to do that. Who wants to work with me? And then you work on it for a weekend. Who knows what will happen? It took us a year to make something happen on a weekend project, right? I think that, unless, honestly, I can't think of one thing that is so awesome that you can't share with other people, that is so unique and proprietary, unless you build it already, right? But otherwise, just talk to people. And if they steal your idea, just go work with them. Big friends.
So are you purposing that question because you're looking for a co-founder? Or?
Sort of, yes.
Okay. And you mentioned intellectual property.
Yes.
So are you going to be filing for patents?
No,
or?
not
Yeah, but like down the road, do you think it's worth it? So is it like hardware?
Software.
Yeah, so like, I don't know. I share this opinion of both these people. I hate the term stealth mode. And your job right now is to just thrash and obviously tell as many people as possible about what you're doing. The one thing that you should keep in mind is that perception is often reality. So if you go around kind of swinging your sausage around talking about how you already built this thing, already have customers and all that kind of stuff, you probably won't have any problem finding people to work on it with you, and when they realize you didn't, be like, oh yeah, it was just, you protecting our IP or whatever, right? Yeah, I would say be as verbal as possible. The whole stealth mode thing is like very 1990s, because again, so many people are going to have that idea, and the difference between you and them is your ability to execute, and execute quickly. Drop out of school if you need to, and turn the dials, because you look at Dig versus Reddit, you look at Facebook versus MySpace, you look at Bajard versus Misty, whatever. There's always going to be them versus them, and somebody wins, and it all comes down to how fast they pull it off. So,
We had one more question.
Yeah, this is for anyone. Regarding enterprise sales, when you first start out and you don't really have a track record and you're a startup, do you have any good tips for how you sort of get people to sign up as beta users or as paying customers? And what were your personal experiences with how long it took and sort of what your conversion rate was?
Right. So yeah, like the story of Conestoga might be a one-off, but if you want beta users quickly, the easiest way is free. So what we did is we just simply delayed payment and gave them a later date to basically say, yes, we'll do it, and here's the money back. And we knew they were going to say yes because it's awesome, we believe in it. So that's probably the easiest way. Give them, be so passionate and believing in your idea that you will just do it for free and tell them that I believe it's so good for you that you will pay me in a month. I'm just going to do it for you, and we'll see what happens. That's probably pretty easy for enterprise, where the most straightforward way. I mean, to get in the meeting, you're a student, it's like, and then just, if you really think you have something great, the best thing for enterprise is, I'm going to make you more money. Everyone, our biggest challenge and our biggest realization is that, these guys, all they want to do is look into their boss, right? Unless you're talking to the CEO of the largest, at the very top, they just want to look good. So if they can say, we adopted this startup program, I took massive risk on these guys, and now they're paying dividends, we're making more money, or we're saving money. They want that. If you say, I'm going to sell you this awesome thing, and it's going to save you 10 minutes in your day, or it's going to do this great thing that's nice to have, really, well, they're not going to take that risk, because if they spend the money, and it doesn't work out in I'm sure they've all been burned, and it doesn't work out, they're going to look terrible. And none of them can afford to do that. So for enterprise sales, make it as easy for them to say yes as possible, and make it as defensible as possible, so that they understand even if this guy is just dicking me around, I can justify why I made this investment of leaving faith on him. That's normally the case if you're talking to the manager. Just understand who the person is that you're talking to.
So we actually do a combination of both. That is kind of show your value through if you can offer something free, but at the same time what we often do is we'll find a company online and we'll say they need something digital that will bring them a lot of value, and it'll be something that may be of interest to one of us, like, wouldn't it be cool if this company had this? And we'll literally cold call them, and we will have already started on strategy and how to build that and what it's going to look like, what the features are going to look like, and we kind of offer that free. We thought of this for you, we have this strategy, this is what's going to look like, this is the value. And I think it's exactly the same thing, and make sure that it's as easy as possible to say yes. And Michael often mentioned, make yourself look bigger. It's all about perception. So that's going to be a big part of your sales team as well.
Yeah, the one other motivator is fear of missing out. So we made a video for BMO. They didn't actually tell us to make it or pay us to make it. We put it on our site, and it looked like we made it for them. And we went to TD, and we were like, yeah, we made it for BMO.
The Johnsons.
Yeah, that didn't work, actually. It got us meetings. So my biggest problem there was finding the decision maker. These organizations are huge. So our first enterprise deal technically just closed. And we've been at the table on a lot of them. What I've realized now is in our market, which is very different from every other market, we're selling a platform that helps people market their product with video. A lot of these people don't have video, right? And they know that they need to do something with video, but they don't know what. And so we help them establish a strategy and a framework that's padded out by our technology. So we come in as like a services company, there's a consulting arrangement, all that kind of stuff, but it's all padded out and hidden within the monthly recurring revenue fee as a subscription to the technology, because that's really what we care about, what our investors care about. So there's a ton of techniques, but you mentioned duration. There's no way of knowing, like Hungway closed Conestoga Mall, which is a huge, corporation in a fairly short period of time. I worked with a large company in San Francisco. I was visiting them once a week. I was basically living out there on the beach, and they eventually chose someone else because we were a risky decision as a startup. That's for financials. They chose a company with $80 million in funding versus us with $1.5. So again, it's not something that you can just label. I'd say go after as many as you can at once, because your conversion rate is going to be low. It might be 1 in 100. When you think about the amount of time and energy required for one of them, that's daunting, but it's a slog, especially in B2B SaaS. Your first few customers are just a grind, and you got to work so hard for them. When that transaction happens, it gets easier from there, especially if you get a really good reference client in hand. So, I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah, go ahead. Cool.
I guess that would be it for the panel talks. I would like to thank you, all the panelists, for coming and talking about all the knowledge you guys have gathered throughout the years. And I think this is really valuable for student entrepreneurs right now that are actually in that moment and trying to see what's the next step to take after, right? A big round of applause. I just want to say, on behalf of the society, we have a small token of appreciation. You can take your time.
Yes, I did. We have gifts for you guys, please.
Thank you for coming. We have our networking session after, so feel free to come up. It's still 7:30, so about 25 minutes. So feel free to come up and talk to the panelists themselves. Introduce yourself. See what you're doing, and they will love to hear what you guys are doing. All the food's outside, so I guess we can head outside.
We can head outside. There's a nice area there. There's food. You guys can grab food and then talk there.
Yeah.